So the rich and powerful are meeting again at Davos, Switzerland, to solve the problems that they themselves seems to have created or even profited from. India is sending its largest ever delegation comprising for 5 union ministers, 3 chief ministers, and nearly 100 CEOs to Davos this year. It is also happening in the context of US tariffs and changes in visa rules looming large. From Ukraine and Gaza or climate change threats from Delhi to Dallas, it seems everything will be on the platter in this year's World Economic Forum, along with, of course, Thai delicacies. We have, in the meantime, from the last time they had met last year, have crossed the 1.5 degrees threshold, a major milestone in climate discourse. Jayati, can you share with the listeners a little more about what is this World Economic Forum and whether one can actually expect anything worthwhile from this gang?
The World Economic Forum is a club of the rich, and not just any old rich, the extremely rich. And those who want to be part of the extremely rich, whether they are individuals or corporations, they are the ones who make it a point to be seen there. That's why it's growing all the time. And it's growing because of this aspirational quality that it has in terms of capitalism. These are, if you like, the real lords of the world, the universe today. These are the people who control global capitalism and therefore all of us, in a way, the system. And therefore you find all kinds of governments showing up, even progressive governments. But of course, the non-progressive governments, shall I say, the ones who anyway want to be there in that league, go in large numbers because they are desperate to catch the attention of potential investors. The World Economic Forum in Davos is seen as a place where you attract investors. That's how developing countries see it. That's why they go there with these huge delegations. They're basically trying to make their economy look attractive to global investors, either in finance or in different kinds of sectors. Typically, however, the size of the delegation has very little to do with the success of attracting that kind of investment because, finally, capitalists are hard-headed and their goal is profits. It's true, their goal is short-term profit. What they would like to see are things that enable them to make a quick buck and move on to the next country. And so they demand various types of enticement. Unfortunately, very often, even those enticements are not enough. That is, governments go and promise all kinds of things. They do side deals with companies. A lot of the stuff that really matters in Davos doesn't happen inside the rooms where the official discussions are. They happen in the corridors and in the coffee shops and in the side deals. So the hope, I imagine, for India is that somehow we will attract a lot of foreign investment that will make up for the fact that domestic investment has collapsed. Domestic private investment was negative, according to our latest data in the last quarter. It's not just slowing down, it is negative. The only reason investment rates are still at above 30% is because the government keeps trying to invest in infrastructure and so on. But even that is not enough to actually make our domestic investors want to put in more money in what they see as a stagnant domestic market. So all the hype that India is trying to create abroad and the hype it's trying to create inside the country, that hype is seen through by those who are really interested in profit making. So yes, they will come in the financial sector if they want. Yes, they will go in for speculative investments. But when they think they've made their killing, they move on. And we see they're already moving on. The foreign private investors are already moving on. We've had outflows in the last 2 quarters. So unless India solves its own problem in terms of the domestic market, which we cannot do unless we allow wage incomes and farmers' incomes to increase, this is not going to happen, no matter how much of a delegation you send. Maybe you'll get the odd investment here or there, especially if they can cut into an existing market. Yeah. But otherwise, you're not going to see a big inflow of investment. Going to Davos, in that sense, is not particularly helpful for the Indian economy. It's never really been helpful for Indian people. But I imagine it could even be embarrassing for the government if all of that effort ends up in very little additional foreign investment, which I think is likely.
Right. No, you are right, Jayati, because even the massive tax breaks were given with the expectation that private investment would increase, but we have seen that nothing of that sort has happened. And of course, inequality has only sharpened over the last few years. Now, we have heard voices expressing concerns about inequality in Davos before. It feels like those who have perpetuated the grotesque inequality that is on display today are now also, in fact, trying to hijack the language of opposing inequality. At the same time, the intergovernmental negotiations for UN Framework Convention on International Tax Cooperation is set to begin its meeting in early February next month. Can you share with us what has been the prospects as well as challenges in the global discourse on inequality? What is there to look forward to? What is there to beware of? If you could share us your thoughts
Yeah,
about in the context of
sure.
Davos, because in this week, once again, there will be a lot of discussion about inequality and this and that.
You know,
What
what
is to
is,
look forward to?
yeah, what is really striking about inequality is that when it became a huge subject of public discussion, when Piketty and a lot of other people, Michael Sandel and others started talking about global inequality, Branko Milanovic and others, in fact, it has gone up much more since then. The rate of increase of inequality has just been over the charts. It's absolutely extraordinary, the rate of increase. Last year, we got 3 times the number of increase in number of billionaires than we had the year before. I mean, extraordinary increases in inequality. At an average, billionaires across the world and earned $2 million a day on average. Okay, the top 10 billionaires earned $100 million per day on average, not by doing anything, not by being productive and etc., but by basically manipulating the system. 60% of that money comes from inheritance, from cronyism, from regulatory biases that they are able to enforce. I mean, we're going to see a lot more of that now with Elon Musk effectively controlling the US government, and we know who controlling the Indian government. So all of this is what is responsible for them adding continuously to their wealth, while the poor actually get more and more fragile lives, and the middle classes get squeezed. So it is an extraordinary explosion, actually, of inequality. And the multilateral system has really been unable to cope with this. The IMF and the World Bank have added to inequalities. They don't go out encouraging progressive taxation. They, in fact, ask for regressive taxation measures pretty much everywhere they go. They ask for fiscal austerity, which means cutting down on basic public services, public employment, and all of these things. So those multilateral institutions have failed us. The one place where there is, I believe, now some possibility of change is what you mentioned, is in the UN with the negotiations on taxation. Now, this was earlier something that was being handled within the OECD at the insistence of the rich countries, because even they recognize that it's obscene that enormous companies like Amazon or Apple and etc. get away with paying almost no taxes using the existing global tax system. So the OECD had a 9-year-long process of negotiations. They called it an inclusive process because midway through they brought in developing countries to sit in the room, not sit at the table with the microphones, but in the room. And this produced a very, what shall I say, a very moderate and in fact disappointing outcome, because it was supposed to impose one tax, a unitary taxation system on all multinationals. That is, the global profits are seen as the taxable profits, and every country taxes its share of that global profit according to its own tax rate. Very important principle, but it was watered down to such an extent that it was made to apply to only the top companies, just the top 100 companies, that only taxes above 10% could be distributed, and within that, only a quarter of that could be distributed for no economic reason. Okay. Similarly, a minimum corporate tax rate that was actually passed. We had suggested 25%. It's the median of all global tax rates. The US suggested 21%, but it was watered down to 15%, which is a very low tax rate. It's like Ireland and other tax havens. And so it was a very watered down compromise. The group of Africa fought and fought and fought to shift tax discussions to the United Nations. And they succeeded. I mean, remarkably, 2 years ago, I would not have believed it possible. They had succeeded. The negotiations are ongoing. They're going to be, as you said, starting in February, but they've already started in a way. And it's a huge victory because it has been opposed tooth and nail by the US and Europe and other rich countries like Japan, Australia, and so on. So it's actually a major victory. Now, it doesn't mean that it's all going to be wonderful from now on. These are going to be difficult negotiations. But for a change, developing countries have realized that they need to be united. They have worked out that they have to share the technical expertise and knowledge that is required. And they have worked out that, and they managed to get that these decisions will be made by vote, not consensus. Because the minute you say consensus, it's gone, right? It's opposed by US, Canada, Europe, etc. So it's over. It's going to be happening through voting. Now, that actually opens the door to a whole range of positive possibilities for corporate taxation, for wealth taxation, for how you handle all the taxes on carbon intensive kinds of production, and many different aspects of taxation. There are many subcommittees. It's going to require a lot of technical work, but there's hope. And I think developing countries have wisened up to the need for having that technical expertise. Because you see, otherwise, even the unequal tax system, it's not just skewed towards the rich, it's skewed towards the rich countries. So even when the OECD was proposing this global tax, most of the benefits would have gone to the rich countries. We are now possibly able to think of a system in which you could actually generate a much more equitable outcome. And it could also help in revising tax treaties. There are these bilateral investment treaties and double taxation treaties that really operate against developing countries. We might now be in a position to have UN agreements that supersede these, that actually provide a better, I won't say level playing ground, but at least a better possibility for developing countries to collect the taxes that are rightfully theirs. So in a way, in the global system, which is in tatters, in the multilateral system, really, I do see in this one important area of hope.
No, thanks, Jayati. And probably instead of being carried over in these elite clubs like Davos or even in the OECD formation, probably there is a lot to look forward to and also fight for within the UN framework as far as inequality is concerned. Thank you so much for giving your time, and we will keep coming back to bother you once in a while.
With pleasure. Thank you.